Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. We'll go ahead and settle down. We're a minute or two behind here. We'll let everybody settle in and then call us to order. Well, that was quick. My thanks to everyone. Thank you for everyone that's been here. I will call the Georgia House Higher Education Committee to order here. We have multiple items on the agenda today just for the purposes of planning because we have members. You will see members come and go. It is not for lack of interest or commitment to our subject matter today, but there are multiple things happening around the Capitol, other meetings happening, and other requirements that they go to vote. As is the policy of this committee, I'll just let you know up front that House Bill 131, House Bill 392, and House Bill 427 will all be first hearing and hearing only today. The other items, we're going to hear some changes. In some of them, we may be in a position to move forward. We're probably, well, I'll just address each one of those as we get to them. But House Bill 131, House Bill 392, and House Bill 427 will not be considered for action today. This is a first hearing only. With that, we'll get right into the schedule. Again, because of needs and requirements outside the room today, we're going to do first. By the way, there was a sign-up sheet. I think people saw people out there. I think we've collected that now. We'll try to be open to additions as we can accommodate. We're going to go first to House Bill 185. House Bill 185. Vice Chairman of the Majority Caucus, Representative Houston Gaines. I have LC 491313S. That we were going to speak to a bit, and then we have an amendment that we're going to speak to, and I think we are going to have to do one more item, one or two more items. One's a Scribner's error, and then we may need to further clarify some language, but I'll let the gentleman speak to that. We would hope to get to, well, I'll let the gentleman present his measure, and then we'll see what the posture is of the commission.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Appreciate you having me back on House Bill 185. As we discussed in the last meeting, generally speaking, what this legislation does is it allows participants of inclusive post-secondary education programs, which are programs that allow students with intellectual disabilities to attend some of our USG and TCSG universities and colleges, to allow these students to receive some sort of funding. The original legislation had them under the Hope Scholarship. I know there was some concerns about that that were raised, and so instead we've taken it out of Hope, and now it would be your traditional state funding route that would be a grant program, the IBSE grant program, that would be a full tuition amount for these students, and that's the major change in the legislation. It's no longer under the Hope Scholarship, but would still be funding the tuition amount for these individual students, and that's again the main change in the legislation. I know you had an amendment potential about sunsetting the program, which we're open to if that's the will of the committee. I know there was some additional questions that you had just raised on lines 39 to 41, which I know Legislative Council is working up some potential language to clarify. I think we're all in agreement on what the intent of that is, but to maybe clarify. But that's where we are in the bill. And there are several folks with the various programs here in the audience that can maybe help answer questions, including the Georgia Council on Developmental Disabilities and others.
Thank you. And given given our schedule today, unless the committee has concerns about the overall policy, we'll move forward and we'll recognize those that came to testify. But if we look like we have a policy that doesn't need any additional support, we'll just recognize them for their support. I will take this opportunity to discuss those three lines on 39 through 41 have been reworded a bit since we were last here. The idea, the gentleman's proposal, and to have I think you use IPSI is what
That's right.
is what you pronounce that, and to have a robust IPSI program is to have the students in classroom with students that maybe don't have the same type of intellectual or physical disabilities, and that's what that language intends to do. The way I read it could be construed as requiring participating students, non-disabled peers to enroll. We can't require other people to do something, so we want to reword that to say that at least 50% of the classes offered as part of the program have to be open for enrollment by others in the college or the institution. So we want to make sure we get that language correct, so we can't write something in law here and require students not in the program to do one thing or the other. But that is the policy that we would enforce with the language coming back, that we want the programs to be open and available to that. So that would be the change we would bring back when we meet tomorrow for action on. The second thing is the gentleman mentioned, I had suggested, given this being a new program, and I guess it comes a bit from Ways and Means, that when we start something new, typically if we put these things in law and there's not a sunset or a status check, nobody ever looks at it to see what it's doing. So it is not my intent. The amendment was drawn July 1st, 2030. If you're in the program before that, you'd be able to complete it. I would maybe suggest it would be 2028. So that would give like 6 years to go through, 2 cohorts, if you will, if it's a 4-year program to go through. There may actually be more than that because people are in there now and be finishing. But have the committee. I'm going to bring that as an amendment, even with the bill tomorrow, and let the committee vote on it, because that's just my thought. The reason for that being that there'll be monies expended. It has to be budgeted. I think we look at a return. There may be something more the state wants to do if there's a great benefit being had for the students in the state, and this will require this committee in the future to come back and look at that. But I'm going to keep the bill whole, bring that as an amendment, and go with the will of the committee on that if it pleases the committee. So with that, does anybody have a concern with the policy? I'd be happy if somebody's come to take brief testimony, but we had that at the first hearing, and I think I don't want to speak for the committee members, but I think there was general support of your program. Of the program and then the individual. So with that, I'll ask the committee, do you have questions of the author, or do we need to hear testimony in support? No one signed up, I am told. So we will take 185 into that posture, work on that language on 39 through 41, fix the Scribner's error, and then I will bring forth as an amendment the idea of a status check or a sunset, unless the committee feels, sort of the will of the committee feels like that's a good idea, we'll go ahead and incorporate it into the bill. So I'll bring that forward as an amendment the committee can adopt or not adopt at the will of the committee. Anything further on 185? I hear that. Thank you very much. And by the way, if those are the changes we make, I know you're busy, have other items, we will take care of the bill for you. If you need not attend tomorrow, if you or have other places to be.
Thank you.
If you trust Chairman Perkle down there with your proposition.
I'll leave it with Chairman Wiedauer.
Yes. Well, he is your University of Georgia brother. Yes, sir. All right. So we're going to go then to Representative Matt Gamble, Florida Leader Gamble. Come back and tell us about your new proposition, House Bill 130.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman, and members of the committee. It's good to be with you this afternoon, and we're back with House Bill 130, which we had discussed probably about a week or two ago now. We have a substitute today. After our conversation the last time, we had some really great questions from the committee, and in good faith, we have worked to accommodate some of those. I'm also joined today by President Lynn Riley from the Georgia Student Finance Commission. She will be here to address some specific technicalities of the bill. But let me just start by saying, this is Governor Kemp's administrative initiative, which it's the Georgia Peace Officer Service Loan Repayment Program. This is designed to recruit and retain public law enforcement officers across the state of Georgia, which was discussed the last time, is around 3,800 people statewide if you consider police, sheriff, and Georgia State Patrol, which are all a part of what this bill is designed to help. This builds upon what the governor did last year, adding criminal justice degrees to the High Demand Career Initiative to be eligible for the Hope Career Grant. Law enforcement officers are critical to protecting the citizens of this state, but are often faced with a decision between heeding the call of public service or seeking other opportunities to pay student loans. So to ensure that we're doing what we can to retain top talent, we're looking to implement and invest $3.2 million in a loan repayment plan for state and local law enforcement. Again, this plan funds up to 800 officers and will provide a loan repayment of up to $20,000 per officer in exchange for 5 years of service. The substitute allows our existing officers to also participate in this program if they enroll and complete a criminal justice degree. This program is included in the governor's budget report for fiscal year 24. You should all have a copy of the questions that were asked in the last meeting and the answers that we have provided, some very good questions that we have provided for you. But I want to specifically mention in the substitute that you have in front of you, in particular on lines 23 through 25, that is where you will see the change from the previous bill. And basically what we're doing in this substitute is we're creating an additional eligible applicant for a full-time peace officer who is enrolled in a criminal justice only course of study towards completion. So previously in the prior bill, it was pretty much open, wide open, and you all expressed concerns with that. And so what we've done here is we have tightened this up so that if you are an existing peace officer who's currently employed, that you can take advantage of this, but it has to be specifically in a criminal justice course of study that you work on. And again, President Riley is here, and she can speak to some of the technicalities of that. Also, I want to call your attention to the other part of the bill that I'll mention that was changed, lines 35. In lines 35 through 77, basically the substitute tweaks the wording related to installment payments for full-time peace officers and those who are enrolled in a criminal justice only course of study towards completion while employed. And so we have tightened that up. For the multiple scenarios an eligible recipient may find themselves in, Georgia Student Finance Commission would be allowed to create policies that accommodate an individual's needs and or prevent a bad actor from taking advantage of this program. Additionally, the Student Finance Commission would have flexibility to change certain parts of the program for efficiency and program performance. So those are the two changes that were made to the bill. In the conversation that we had the previous time, again, there were lots of great ideas that we certainly are interested in discussing, but as far as the proposal that you have in front of you and what the governor and I bring to you today, this is the concept that we have behind the service loan repayment program. And so with that, Mr. Chairman, I'm happy to take any questions that you may have.
Thank you, Mr. Floor Leader. Yeah, I want to thank you and the governor's office. I know this is not everything that the committee had reached for in supporting the additional recruitment of public safety individuals, specifically law enforcement officers, but it is a start, and I think we got good feedback that if there were more that we were interested in, we would do that and continue to work on that. But we wanted to keep this one focused there. There are two folks that have signed up to talk to this bill that we'll go to. But if I have two blinking lights here, Dr. Clark and Chairman Dubnik, if y'all have questions of the author, we'll go to those before we get to the speakers. Yes, ma'am. Dr. Clark.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Could you clarify what you mean in lines 23 through 25? So, if I am I'm currently employed as a full-time peace officer. Is there a specific amount of time I have to have been employed by? And is this going to pay off student loans that I had from previously, or is this going to pay off the study for criminal justice that I'm going into now?
Right. So again, the eligibility is January 1 of this year. You would have had to have been employed or become employed to be eligible for the program. As far as the question about being able to pay for the criminal justice related degree, it would have to be in that specific area in order to be eligible to be paid. So that's the difference between what we're doing here. The new people coming in will still have the opportunity to pay off previous debt, but the existing officers, it would only be applicable to pursuing a criminal justice degree.
So to follow up, would you pay that after they get the degree, or are you paying for it as they're studying?
As they're studying.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Couple of quick questions for you. So, should someone be in the scenario that Dr. Clark just brought up, and they're getting repaid, but now they decide they've had a change of heart and they're opting out of the career, but maybe they're in year 3 of 5. Do they owe us money back for those first 2 years?
They do not, but the loan at that point would convert to the original terms, and they would no longer be eligible for any additional payment towards the loan.
So just to confirm, they could leave the career, that would terminate the agreement, but they would not owe any payment back.
That is correct.
Okay. And
I believe, just to follow up on that, they're being paid, 1 year coming in arrear. So they would, if they've worked their year, then that would justify the payment. They would get that payment. They've worked that year.
Understood.
Yes.
And a follow-up, if I may, Mr. Chairman. The 5 years of service that it requires, we're not, if I read somewhere in here, they must remain a resident of Georgia, but if they were to go from one agency to another, from a police department to a sheriff's office to state patrol,
Yep.
do they have the leeway to move within, quote unquote, those jurisdictions?
No break in service, and that question was asked the last time, and it's a fair question. But as long as there's not a break in service, Student Finance Commission will be monitoring the program, and they'll have the ability to work with those individuals if that scenario does occur.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you for coming today. Lines 47 through 49, who considers a cause sufficient? Like, who would be the authority? And do they have a chance for redemption if they weren't fired and they served their time or whatever punishment? Do they have a chance for redemption, like to get their scholarship loan repayment back? Or
Thank you for that question, Representative. Yes, the Student Finance Authority would detail in the agreements that are entered into with the applicant all of the potential reasons for disqualification and any remedies that could apply that could put them back in good standing.
thank you.
Representative Park, you got to hit the button sooner. Representative
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Is there a term limit on how long it should take them to get their degree? I mean, is it indefinite, or like you're going to give them 6 years because they will be working, but to complete the degree?
Thank you for that question, Representative. We would certainly indicate in the agreement that we enter into with the applicant the length of time that this would be eligible, and we'd be very much interested in feedback from the committee on what they would think is appropriate. We understand that it would be difficult for a full-time employed peace officer to be able to take 15 credit hours in any one semester, so there certainly is going to need to be some consideration on a minimum number of credits they would need to earn each year to continue to receive benefit from the program.
I want to follow up on the lady's question because that raised a good question. So is it your thought, based on the reading of the bill, that it says, 5 years at $4,000 is the maximum, is kind of the way it's built in if you had more coming in. But is it your belief that if an individual was taking advantage of it and had less than $4,000 that went 6 years, that as long as they didn't go past the 20, you would have the authority to enter an agreement and honor that? So as long as they didn't go over the $20,000.
Correct. Thank you for that question,
Okay.
Mr. Chairman. There would be flexibility in that regard.
Thank you. The Minority Whip, Representative Park.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Going back to lines 24 and 25, I know this is a bill that passed last year before. This is new language in terms of the limitation as to which programs they'd be able to pursue. So the two questions that come to mind is, one, how does this interplay with the high career grants that we passed last year that would be otherwise fully covered, is my understanding, under the HOPE grant? And then two, would there be scenarios in which we'd want to incentivize law enforcement or encourage law enforcement to obtain higher education beyond just the scope of the field of criminal justice?
Well, in the original bill, it was that wide open as far as what we would be paying for, but there was some concern about that, which we've addressed in this substitute by specifying that for the existing law enforcement officers, it has to be an undergraduate degree program related to criminal justice. It would be up to the will of the legislature as far as if you wanted to come back later on and add advanced degrees beyond that, but this is just for undergraduate. And then your first question, say that one more time. Just to make sure.
Let me help with that. The high demand career field allows you to get that criminal justice degree, now. The issue is if you have a bachelor's, you're not eligible to do that, I believe. Correct?
That is right. And then also you have HOPE eligibility issues that will run out at some point. So this allows you to get around that concern if you're outside of that window.
Thank you.
This makes sure we capture the folks that are working. And one of the, if I can, one of the, I think the thoughts are we're trying to, employ, bring more people and retain. And quite frankly, you wanted to be careful that you paid for somebody to get a degree outside the field of law enforcement, that you were basically paying for them to exit. So you bring a great point up too, that at some point there may be an administrative degree that comes along to grow in the, grow into management and leadership, and that's certainly something we could have. You have a couple more questions here. Representative Jackson.
I didn't quite understand. We were talking about 5 years, and then we were talking about officers that may take more than 5 years because of their work schedules and all of that. Shouldn't that be spelled out to a maximum of?
Well, again, Representative, the Georgia Student Finance Commission in the promulgation of the rules is going to be able to address that, and I'll let Commissioner Riley speak specifically to that. But that again, I know these are very good technical questions as far as how the program will be implemented, but in this legislation as it's outlined, they have the authority to put those parameters in place that will address the concerns that the committee has expressed.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And this actually might be a question for Legislative Council, or maybe it's just my reading of it. But the way I read lines 17 through 20, I guess till we get all the way to the bottom, 35, are all of the list of qualifications. And so when I see the "and" on line 22, it makes it seem like it still is only for peace officers in the state for the first time on or after January 1st, 2023. I think I'm asking technically how this actually spells out that people who are currently employed, just the physical way it is written in the bill.
The intent is, no, I'm going to go to the attorney. The intent is you have to have been employed on or after January 1st, 2023. So there could be those that are currently employed, and there could be those in the future. So that is a requirement. You have to do that, and you have to have either completed a course of study or be taking another one. So the first portion has to be met either way. The second one is where the OR goes in. You've either completed your study and you've gone to work after January, or you're gone to work after January and you're going to do more.
But it says for the first time. Okay. Okay, Mr. Chair, thank you.
That brings up a good point. That's not what we wanted to do.
That is not what that says.
We wanted to make this available for all of the current police officers. She read it just like we wanted, but I think, do we not want to include this for current officers that were employed before January 1st to retain them?
That was my understanding.
It was written for those after January 1, 2023. So, that's what's specified here. But, Mr. Chairman, as far as
Well, okay, so that was okay. I got you. All right, we'll move on to there. Representative, I'm going to go to Chairman Knight, and then I'll come back to you because we got a first-time person that popped in. Chairman Knight.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I want to thank the floor leader for bringing this, and I appreciate all that you've done. I know we've had hearings and we've made some good changes that I think will really make a difference, whether we're incentivizing somebody new coming into the force that's thinking about joining it for the first time, or on the backside, existing officers who want to further pursue education around law enforcement and try to incentivize them to stay and continue their career. So I know there are a lot of questions, more of a comment here, a lot of questions that are asked. And again, I want to make sure that I'm saying this right, but Student Finance has the ability through rule and reg to implement this so that a lot of the details that are being asked will be taken care of and will be put forth such that anybody enrolls in this or avails themselves of this bill, should it pass, they will know going into the situation, what are the ground rules, what are the specifics, because we can't name everything in legislation. You can't take care of every scenario. That's why we leave that to our executive agencies to do rule and reg, promulgated based on the concept of the law. So I want to thank you for that and the hard work here.
That is right, Chairman, and this concept that we're asking you to support today is designed to recruit and retain law enforcement officers. And I know there are some very good questions about how the program will work and all of the scenarios that could or could not play out. But again, that is where the Georgia Student Finance Commission, through this legislation, has the authority to administer this program, and they will, as they have proven in the past, be a good steward of this program. And I have every confidence in President Riley and her ability to do that.
I'm going to get one more question in order to get testimony on that.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Can you help me clarify if an officer already has a bachelor's and, well, they're not an officer, they already have a bachelor's, they have a loan, they want to become an officer, but they're going to pursue a master's degree in law enforcement, you guys will not reimburse that degree?
It's undergraduate only.
Yeah, that's okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Floor Leader Gamble, just so I'm perfectly clear, this is a recruitment bill, not a retention bill, right? It's narrowly written to attract people into it.
Yes, it is written to attract people, but it is also written to retain individuals as well. So it is both.
But provided they were hired after January of
Correct.
23.
That's correct.
Which would be
and have worked 5 years.
okay. I'm having a hard time processing.
Well, they
So if I was
it
hired,
pays them. I mean, just was clear on his work. It pays them out over 5 years. They don't have to have worked there. They obviously can't come January 1st and already have worked there 5 years.
That's right.
okay.
Please continue.
So if I were hired 10 years, I've been a loyal state trooper for 10 years, and I want to study. I want to get my degree, my undergraduate degree in criminal justice. I've been there for 10 years, longer before 2023.
You're eligible.
Okay. It's written in a way that's a little confusing. I wonder if we could tidy that up a little.
Well, that's what I thought we wanted.
Right.
And I thank you for bringing that. But the way I read, Dr. Clark brings that up. The way I read that is, and we're not going to put the bill together today. We've got a lot of things we got to do.
Right.
But lines 20 through 22 read that you have to have been employed after January 1st, 2023 for any of this to append to you. And I thought that's the reason we tightened down to criminal justice. We wanted to value those employees that had been with us beforehand, if they wanted to continue and learn more about it. That's good for everybody, right? They learn more about policing and so I think that is what we need to work on, if that be the will of the committee. Let's do this, if you don't mind, just to help us move along. We've got 2 people that want to testify on it. We've got several bills. Let's let you. I'll authorize you, if you'll go talk to legislative council, make sure we're on that while we're taking the testimony, and then we'll come back to you.
All right. Sounds good. Thank you.
So we'll multitask here. Terry Norris, you represent some of our 159 sheriffs. Mr. Norris.
Yeah, sir. I'm Terry Norris. I'm Executive Director of the Georgia Sheriff's Association. And we certainly appreciate the committee hearing this bill, and y'all put a lot of time and energy into perfecting it, so thank you for that. It is no secret that this legislature, this House, and even you all on this committee recognize the struggles we are having in law enforcement, as other professions are, to recruit and train and keep employees. And this is a big step from the local perspective to doing that. The legislature's hands are somewhat tied on helping local law enforcement officers with salaries and benefits, et cetera. But this will help us locally to encourage our folks to go to school and increase their level of intelligence and knowledge and experience. That college experience is good for a lot of reasons. Mainly endurance and being able to read. We do a lot of training at the Georgia Sheriff's Association. In fact, we train probably 4,000 plus people annually, and we're seeing more and more difficulty with a lot of our trainees on simple literacy. So this will certainly help advance our profession, and we urge your favorable consideration. Again, thank you.
Would you entertain a question?
Of course, sir.
I'm going to ask the first one, and I have another light flashing. I don't want to put you at odds with the governor, because the governor's thing here, but would it be do you believe it would be at value to include those law enforcement officers that have worked prior to that, to allow them what you heard testimony when it talked about, allow them to go back and have a criminal justice, be able to get into that field, where they can't do that now if they have a bachelor's degree or are not HOPE eligible. Do you find that that wasn't originally the intent of the bill, but we've kind of morphed into that? Do you find a value to that? I know you appreciate the work that's going on. Would that be valuable as well?
Well, certainly any further advancements of any coursework would certainly help. But as I understand the bill and through the conversation today, this is a startup program that's trying to to recruit some new people and maybe keep them a few years. So that would be my general answer to that. So okay, yes, I would think that would be helpful.
We certainly, and nobody wants to. Thank you very much.
Yes, sir.
Representative Burnell.
Mr. Chairman, and thank you for mentioning about the fact that some of them will come with different skills. And that was one reason why I asked that question, because some of them will maybe not have been on, let's see, an 8th grade reader. And so therefore going to college is going to be difficult. So maybe they may have to go to a 2-year program. What we don't want to do is to put a person in the place of college, tell them, if they decide to go, and they don't have the skill set for it. And so what happens is they end up taking a lot of remedial classes, and that's what's paid for, not the degree itself.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Terry. Okay. Was that for Terry? Okay. Ms. Norris, could you come back up 1 second? Have one more question.
Okay. Well, okay, that'll be fine. We're good, Terry.
I'm dismissed again.
Mr. Norris, thank you very much. Representative Glaze, did you have a question?
Yes, so I just want to clarify that all the courses that will be taken will be courses that are not remedial. They will be degree credits.
Well, it will be, the way the bill's written, student finance would be, it would be the coursework that you have to take toward the criminal justice degree. I'm not you are, I think, the lady is schooled in being a counselor. So if somebody is going to toward that degree, it may or may not include a remedial class. But I'll let the president answer that when she gets back up. If
Yeah,
you'll
because that's
hold
two
that.
different things. One
Yes.
remedial and then non-remedial. Yes.
Yes, ma'am. Mr. Ayers, you want to come and?
Good afternoon. My name is Butch Ayers. I'm the Executive Director of the Georgia Association of Chiefs of Police, and thank you for the opportunity to be here this afternoon. Pretty much just echo what Terry Norris just told everyone. I want to thank the committee and the representative for bringing this bill. As you know, the state of Georgia is in what I would consider a crisis situation involving the recruiting and retention for law enforcement officers. The fact of the matter is we have more vacant positions than we have applicants that want to be police officers or law enforcement. So I think anything that we can do to incentivize becoming a law enforcement officer in this state would be good, and I think this bill goes towards that direction. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Ayers. I'm going to go back and, if you would, Representative Gamble, tell us what we found out back there.
So thank you, Mr. Chairman. And again, we've taken feedback from you on this and certainly recognize the concern on line 21 and wanting that to be clear so that you're comfortable with that. So, Mr. Chairman, we will be working with Legislative Council to make that adjustment to where it is clear, and we will bring this back to you in a sub for your meeting tomorrow.
I thank you for doing that, and my apologies to the committee. We had a little bit of a disconnect between whose drawer it was available in down at Legislative Council. So I think it was ready for a whole 24 hours before we got our hands on it because the governor's office thought it was in my drawer and it was actually in theirs. They didn't go get it, and I couldn't get it. So that is my fault for having only a few minutes to look at that and reading it incorrectly, or we would have had a better bill for us. But we'll take that over and hold that over for our next meeting, but be advised that we do want to get in a place that we can take action on that item tomorrow. And I do appreciate the governor's office working with us. I appreciate you, Representative and President Riley, as well as Mr. Norris and Mr. Ayers. And I just want to say this last thing because we have a lot of people in the room. I don't know where Mr. Ayers is. I've lost you out there. He's been in the back. You bring up a great point. We want to recruit new people in the police departments in the sheriff's office, but we don't sometimes think about enough for those officers that have been out there with us for a decade or more, and that's why we wanted to. And I'm so pleased that the governor's office is working with us and recognizing, because they see that value just like everybody else does, and giving them the ability to go and build a career, that can take them further with a criminal justice degree, that we want to do that. So I appreciate the governor's office working with us on that, and we're going to get this done. We're going to support law enforcement and the recruiting because we appreciate them. If you would, just as a matter of time, if you would get with Representative Glaze, if she had a question about the coverage of remedial courses, if we could do that offline, and we'll move on.
Thank you.
Thank you. We're going to brief hearing on this because I do have a little more work we want to do on 163. Representative McDonald, you had some people that want to come and talk to us about it. We see the absolute need. We're looking to help you further on it, but if you want to come and impart some wisdom on us for a couple minutes, I'll invite you up. Yeah. Yeah, no, I do, and I don't know. I think we have representatives from the GBI here. We may have had people up here. We see, just like I said before, there's, at least from the chair's perspective, and the members that I have spoken with are supportive of this matter. We just want to make sure that we have the technical details worked on, and as you can see, we had some things going on with 130, and we have another couple of large bills. So if you guys will hang with us, I think you're going to be pleased with the outcome, and we're trying to put you in a better place than you are today. I appreciate you so much, and sorry for those. Yeah, we'll be meeting. We'll be meeting on this for tomorrow. Yes. Okay, we're going to next go. Representative Kennard. Am I saying your name right? Where is Representative? Is he here, Greg? Just kidding. Can y'all see if Representative Kennard's outside? He was right here. No, because I'm fixing to go to you because Rick's coming next. You ready? Where you gotta go? We do not have that, so we're going to hold that and go then to 131, Chairman Carpenter.
Thank you, Chairman. Committee. We have before you LC 491330S. This is language that we've perfected over the interim, I believe, on this important matter, I think, for the workforce of Georgia. It is very similar to what we've done in the past, but I just want to walk you through the bill real quick. I know time is of the essence on a lot of issues. But basically, this bill would help Georgia's workforce. There's roughly 19,800 individuals with the status of DACA in our state that range between the ages of 15 to 41 that currently do not have the opportunity in the state of Georgia to attend certain colleges within our systems at an affordable rate. And so that's what this bill seeks to address. Just a little bit of highlights of what this bill does do. All right, this bill would allow individuals that have been in the state of Georgia since 2013 that have received their DACA status, that have not committed a felony or high aggravated misdemeanor, to attend certain colleges and certain programs within those colleges at a rate that is more than in-state, but obviously less than out-of-state. That rate would be set by the Board of Regents on an individual university or college basis, depending on their actual cost for that institution. We have talked about the declining enrollment in our colleges across the state for some time. We have talked about border waivers that we offer to kids from Florida, from Tennessee, from Alabama, from South Carolina, and this piece would allow kids that have gone through our K-12 systems, that have graduated, that want to continue on in their educational process, to attend them at a rate that's affordable. I have Dalton State in my community. For a DACA recipient that graduated from Dalton High School as a valedictorian to attend Dalton State, it's $15,000 a year. So what happens is these kids leave the state of Georgia. They go to other states to pursue higher ed opportunities, where after a year they can receive that in-state tuition in certain areas. And so the key is what do we need to do as a state to make sure these individuals that are high achievers stay in our state so they can add value to our workforce? For you that are not familiar with the DACA program, it does require them, it gives them a TIN number so they are able to legally get a driver's license, to go back and forth to work and to school, and then would be required to pay taxes on income in the state of Georgia and federally. So these are Georgia taxpayers, or will be Georgia taxpayers when they're 15 when they're out of school, and I think it's a great opportunity to offer these folks education to make them achieve what they can achieve, because I'm a firm believer, we can fight all we want to about immigration, but I'm a firm believer that these individuals are here to stay, and the federal government will not load all these individuals up and take them back to their respective countries that they really don't know because they've been here since 2007. So without really beating the bill to death, that's really what it does. There's sections in here about USG and for technical college. It makes sure that it applies to both. I'll be glad to take any questions without holding you up too long.
Thank you, Chairman Carpenter. You have two, Dr. Clark. So that's you, number 4, Dr. Clark.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you so much for bringing this bill. I just have a couple of questions. The first question is line 99. I know prior to the sub, the range there was a range instead of it being 110% of the in-state tuition. It was 101 to 110. How did y'all fall on the 110%?
I think I think we wanted to be clear that in the state of Georgia we would allow this opportunity rate, but we wanted to make sure that it wasn't so close to the in-state rate that it would create problems and issues. And like most legislation, you do what you can to make sure you can get it across the finish line, and that was what this piece would address.
All right, thank you. And a follow-up question. A little, I guess, concerned about in line 102 where we say priority consideration to enrollment applications, and then it lists like who gets priority. Are there any concerns about that being constitutionally like a little iffy because it could be seen as discrimination?
I think that I personally don't think so. Obviously, I'm not a constitutional scholar, but I think the intention of the paragraph is to say, look, we're going to check in-state first, out-of-state second, opportunity students third. It's just to make it very clear that American citizens are first, and then the opportunity citizens are second. And I think that's an important piece. If you look across the landscape of the country, that's a pretty important piece for the longevity of this legislation.
If I may, Dr. Clark, as well, let me address that. I added that language after talking with somebody. It's a bit of a belt and suspenders situation in that if you're, in order to be an eligible institution, you cannot have turned away qualified applicants in the last 2 academic years. So this is just a bit of a belt and suspenders, put right there in black letter law that you are going to give priority to in-state and out-of-state. Again, if you're turning anybody away, you weren't eligible in the first place, so this wouldn't apply. Let me sound just for the committee here too. Somewhere in the creation of the sub, we have created on lines 133 for TCSG and on line 49, that should read multiplied times undergraduate in-state tuition. That was in line 43, the opportunity tuition. It's basically, I think everybody is reading it the way it's supposed to be read, but it's technically incorrect. The opportunity tuition is 110% of in-state tuition, not 110% of out-of-state tuition. just we'll have to correct that. This is the first hearing on the bill. But
That's right.
and then I think the gentleman had corrected that in one of his subs, and I think when a second sub was made, that it was.
Yeah. So I mean, I think that the point is right, and it's already been addressed in the. There's a lot of naysayers out here on this legislation that say these are going to take other citizen Georgians' seats in colleges, and that's not what this does. This bill says that if this university or college has capacity, then they can attend and fill those empty seats. You've heard the chairman in the past talk about the airplane scenario, right, where you got an airplane going from Atlanta to Arizona. You got 5 empty seats. Is it worth selling those 5 seats at a different rate just to fill those seats? And I think that's what this legislation not only helps the workforce, but also fills seats in the universities, colleges.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you for bringing this piece of legislation. I remember going down to Dalton State for a visit, and I know that Dalton State has a great success rate with these DACA students.
Yep. It's a Dalton State's one of Georgia's few Hispanic institutions. Receive federal funding for that, and obviously it's something that. As a community, it's important to us. We have my district's 51% Hispanic, and so having an educated workforce is important for Northwest Georgia and the whole state, for that matter.
Thank you.
No further questions. If there are no further questions, we'll move on to testimony on the item. Okay, we have about 15 people. We have about an hour left. So we're going to ask everybody to keep, because we have 2 more bills, keep their comments to 2 or 3 minutes. Mr. King.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. My name is D.A. King. I am president of an organization that is 501c4 nonprofit, according to the IRS. And our goal is to make Georgia as unattractive to the organized crime of illegal immigration as possible. I came today to represent a lot of people who want this bill to die right here in this room for the following reasons. There's a straw man argument going around that there's concern about illegal aliens with DACA taking up seats, making those seats unavailable to Americans and legal immigrants. That's not the argument. The argument is, and it's impossible to deny, that this opportunity tuition bill is in fact creating opportunity for people in the country illegally, no matter whose fault that is unavailable to Americans and legal immigrants who didn't migrate to Georgia. I have friends in Michigan and in California who want to come to school at KSU. They cannot afford the tuition. What you're doing with this bill is considering whether or not you will vote to give opportunity tuition to people in the country illegally while it's denied to those same Americans and legal immigrants. There was a time on this campus where the majority of the legislators were what we call pro-enforcement. I don't know if that's true anymore, but this bill will certainly be an indicator. I want to also bring up, and I'll be very brief, but I've been here a long time, and in 2012, now Congressman, then State Senator Barry Loudermilk passed a bill in the Senate that said illegal aliens could not attend any USG or technical college system school. The compromise was made that people here illegally could attend a certain number of schools as long as those schools did not or had not declined an application for enrollment. That was the deal. The reason you have the clause or see the clause in this bill that the opportunity tuition is only available for attendance to schools that haven't turned anybody away is a result of just what I told you about what happened in 2012. I can go on, but I want to make it clear one more time. The argument was never whether or not we're going to have a limited number of seats and people in the country illegally are going to fill them. That's a straw man argument. It was never said. It is impossible to deny one more time that opportunity tuition does not create an opportunity for Americans and legal immigrants who want to come here. The tuition at KSU, and I did the math. I'm no whiz, but I double checked it. 15-hour class load at KSU for one semester would come out to be $7,000 more for my friend's son to come here from Michigan to go to KSU than it would be for somebody who's in this country illegally. There's a lot of people out there watching this bill, and a lot of us consider a decision to do this to be very, very un-American. I love to take questions, Mr. Chairman, if you have time. Thank you very much.
If we have questions, thank you. Ms. Straighten, I'm sorry.
It's Statham.
Statham, I'm sorry.
Hi,
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Chairman and
Yes, ma'am.
committee members. My name is Kathy Statham. I am a legal citizen of the United States, and I reside in Georgia. I am against this bill, and I would like for it to be killed today. You've heard the old saying, you can put lipstick on a pig, but it's still a pig. We go over this almost every year, and this is just a different bill with a different name, no matter what you call it. This bill, and these are my notes, but I want to make sure that I cover everything quickly. This bill gives special opportunity to illegal aliens that is forbidden for other Americans that come here for an education in our state. In other words, if you live in Tennessee and you come to Georgia, you must pay out-of-state tuition. So why are we going to give any illegal priority over American citizens? So no matter what you call it, whether you want it to be opportunity this year or next year or whatever year it comes up, American citizens come first. My taxpayer money should not be paid for any tuition for anyone that is in this country illegally. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Statham. Yes, ma'am, I'm sorry. David Garcia.
Chairman, 2 seconds while they're coming up. Just
No, we're going to keep going. I'll
Roll it
write
back.
it down. We'll get to you. We'll get
All
to you
right,
later. We'll get back to you. We're going to stay on track. Yes,
Good
sir.
afternoon, Chairman and committee. I'm David Garcia, and I work for a 501c4 advocacy organization named Galileo Impact Fund, and we advocate for the Latino Hispanic community throughout Georgia. I guess I'd like to start by saying that in-state tuition for DACA recipients or opportunity tuition is important for Latino voters throughout the state. And I'd also like to start by adding that DACA recipients are not here illegally. So the organization that I work for, we don't support the sub to the bill in its current form for a number of reasons. And I'll list those reasons. The current conditions on Georgia residency severely limit the number of people who have access. And we don't want there to be a second-tier admissions process that categorizes people by their tuition classification. The current continuous conditions on Georgia residency severely limit the number of people who have access, since it's tied to property ownership and Georgia and getting Georgia ID. And we don't want there to be a second-tier admissions process that categorizes people by their tuition classification. All that said, we think it's great that this bill was introduced, and we think it's a step in the right direction. And I'd also like to bring attention back to the bill's intended purpose, which is to develop our workforce and to support DACA recipients. And I'd mostly like to focus on the supporting DACA recipients component. So the DACA recipients who are eligible for this bill are exceptional students. They have overcome tremendous challenges, and our state has already invested a considerable amount of resources in their K-12 education. They are not seeking a handout or entitlements. They want the same opportunities as other Georgia high school graduates who have earned them. I'd like to bring up two Georgia high school graduates and University System of Georgia graduates who are also DACA recipients who'd like to talk about their experiences.
Well, we're doing 2 minutes each, and you're over yours.
Okay.
If they've signed up.
Yeah, they're the next people on the list.
Then we're going to go to them.
Okay, thank you.
I have Ms. Garcia.
That's right.
Mr. Garcia? Miss, okay. I'm having trouble. You wrote really fast, so I couldn't tell what the first name was. Yes, ma'am.
Vizcaíno Garcia. Hi. My name is Maria Vizcaíno Garcia. I was brought to this country when I was only 3 years old. That was 25 years ago. I am now 27. I grew up in Georgia, Clayton County. I went to Thurgood Marshall Elementary, Morrow Middle, Morrow High. I graduated with over 4.0 GPA in high school. To my surprise, I didn't know I was undocumented till I was in high school, until after I received DACA in 2013. And everything I've paid in terms of tuition has been out of pocket, no handouts, and as of recently, no loans. So just to illustrate, I brought my 2016 tax statements. It's 1098T for Kennesaw State. I paid $22,640. And in 2017, I paid $20,144. So hypothetically, had I not started, I went to Georgia Perimeter the first 2 years, transferred to KSU. So if I've done all 4 years at KSU, I would have paid over $80,000 for a public school education. I'm currently in my master's program where each class is $4,000. So if I wanted to take 2 or 3 classes, I would be paying around $8,000 to $12,000 per semester, which is really hard, especially for someone who doesn't receive otherwise any type of private assistance in terms of scholarships, and someone who just doesn't make enough. I had to take private loans for this, which is the only reason I can continue my education. And I'm a unicorn. I graduated college, but I am one of many, many, many DACA recipients who couldn't even start their first semester. But thank you.
Thank you very much. Where am I here? Raphael. Yes, sir. And looks like it's AR, but pronounce
Yes,
your last
sir.
name for me.
Aragon?
Aragon, okay. We're going to have to get everybody to print in the future. Yes, sir.
It
Go
starts
right
with an
ahead.
A, but yeah, it's pronounced Aragon. Thank you for hearing my testimony.
Yes, sir.
My name is Raphael Aragon. I came to this country when I was 6 years old. I'm an undocumented Georgian. I'm a Georgia taxpayer. I've lived here for the vast majority of my life, and I love this state. I love contributing to it. I love being a part of it. I graduated from Dunwoody High School in 2015. When I graduated from Dunwoody High School, I came to find out that there were no schools in Georgia that were accessible to me because of the cost, despite how hard I had worked in high school to graduate. Luckily, I was awarded a full ride scholarship to a school in Connecticut, where I met tons of incredibly bright, incredibly intelligent, undocumented Georgians who had the same experience that I had. They left Georgia because there were no opportunities for us here. Through my bachelor's, my undergrad, the organization that awarded me my scholarship partnered with Oglethorpe University, and so I was able to return home to be with my family and study here in this great state. But unfortunately, most of my classmates, most of my peers in Connecticut did not do the same. Most of them stayed in Connecticut because they felt like it was a more welcoming and supportive environment. And upon graduation, many of them were scouted and made offers by companies and organizations in the Northeast United States area, and they accepted those offers, uprooted their families from here, from Georgia, their small businesses, their whole entire economy they took from Georgia to the Northeast United States. So many of them graduated with degrees as engineers, computer science degrees, things that I think would be valuable to Georgia. And I think it's an incredible and unfortunate loss of the investment that this state has made in us in our K through 12 education, to just allow these bright, intelligent people who love this state and want to continue living here to go somewhere else. That's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Maria Del Rosano, did I get that right?
It was close. Thank you, Chairman. My name is Maria del Rosario. Palacios. I am here as a community member and also as a co-founder to Georgia Familias Unidas, a poultry plant worker advocacy group in Northeast Georgia. I have a few points for consideration for the committee that I want to talk to about. As someone who formerly was undocumented when I did my first 2 years of college, I think this is a tremendous initiative moving in a great direction. And I just wanted to point out 3 things in the substitute that I noticed. One, there is not a maximum tuition listed. Maybe in the update that was taken off, and I heard Chairman Carpenter discuss that was an intention, right, to have a minimum and a maximum. The maximum is not listed. The second point is I want to offer for consideration as someone who's worked in the university system. I used to be the Latino Success Coordinator at the University of North Georgia. Oftentimes, students would have issues proving continuous Georgia residency or even residency period if they were dependents because their parents don't have an ID or don't have property that they own in Georgia. So just to increase access, I would consider either adding in language or modifying that so that no person under the age of 24 is discounted because their parents can't prove continuous Georgia residency because maybe they're out of status. My third and final point is the admissions second tier classification. I heard you loud and clear when you said this is supposed to be a belt and suspenders type of addition. However, I'm concerned that there might be misclassification of students into this category, because as it is DACA, when you get DACA, you get an EAD, right? You get the work permit, and it doesn't say on there DACA. Other folks who have U visas, T visas also have a work permit, and folks of varying statuses. I would just hate for there to be a second tier system where folks are inadvertently placed to wait until other folks either accept, reject, or defer. And that actually happens with U.S. citizens currently. I've been an advocate in 5 different universities where U.S. citizens were placed in out-of-state tuition classification because their parents couldn't prove residency. So those are the 3 things that I would just ask for consideration to be modified. I think this initiative is great, and I'm looking forward to what the committee does. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. My name is Jaime Rangel. I am the Georgia State Immigration Director for Forward.us. We are a national bipartisan organization that focuses on breaking through political gridlock to find bipartisan solutions to our broken immigration and criminal justice system. As an organization and as someone who is a DACA recipient, I want to applaud Representative Casey Carpenter for this bill. We support the bill. We support the legislative process that this bill is going to go through, and we're here to be a resource. I was brought to this country when I was only an infant. In fact, the first steps that I took in this country were in American soil. I was a Boy Scout, and I grew up Pledge Allegiance. To this day, will stand and pledge allegiance to that flag. Right now, in Georgia, we have a workforce shortage, and we have students who want to go to school. And I want to be clear here, we have lawful presence here. We, during the Trump administration, the Biden administration, and Obama's administration, we came out of the shadows and showed the government who we are. And what we're showing the government right now in the state is that right now in Georgia, we have a spending power of $624 million. So we contribute in taxes $77 million in state and local taxes. We just had a young lady right here present her proof of tax, her proof of tuition, which therefore she has to pay taxes, and of course she's working, so we're paying taxes. So we support this bill. Georgia has a labor shortage. This is a solution right here. This is a workforce bill, and we support the legislative process that's going to go through. And I am happy to be a resource to anyone here in this committee, and I applaud the work that's being done here. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mr. Rungel. I apologize for butchering your first name there. Thank you, Jaime.
It's okay. People call me Jamie here too, so I've been here for 7 years. So
yes, thank you very much.
Doesn't matter. Thank you,
my apologies. Jim Hollingsworth.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, committee. My name is Jim Hollingsworth. I lead a local Christian ministry called Path United, and I'm here to speak in support of this bill as well. I applaud Representative Carpenter and his hard work on this bill. I work alongside about 600 Latino immigrant families and children through after-school community-based ministry. and we've been doing so for about 13 years. And I just wanted to come and speak on behalf of my friends and my coworkers who are DACA recipients who just want an opportunity to go to school and provide for their families. So our organization is all about helping young people flourish. And I believe that that is what the role of government is as well, is to help young people flourish. And I believe that this bill gives the opportunity for young people to be able to take a step after high school and go to college. And so I'm a fifth generation Georgian. I've been here my whole life. My relationships with these DACA recipients have changed my life for the better. They love Georgia as much as I do. They are committed to being here, to raising their families. Everything I'm hearing today about workforce development, it makes total sense to me that we're going to give opportunity for more young people to be able to go to college in this state. So thank you so much for the opportunity to be here and share and support.
That's too tiny a name. It's Serrano, and I can't read the, you write tiny. I can't read. So just give us your name for the record.
Yes,
and thank you for
good
coming.
afternoon. My name is Giovanni Serrano. I am a community organizer at the Georgia Latino Alliance for Human Rights. GLARD, HB 131 is taking a positive step in improving equity and education for all Georgians. HB 131 is a forward step to alleviate the enrollment issue that Georgia's public universities are currently facing. Experts in the states that have passed tuition equity legislations or policies have claimed that the expenses occurring there now has been negligible. It says tuition plus some percentage. It's not the same as free tuition. Although it is a relief, the money these students pay boosts school revenues because it's money that institutions wouldn't otherwise get. The fact is that educating all young people is essential for the state and the country's economic future. Experience in the states that have adopted tuition equity laws or policies suggests that such policies help United States citizens, immigrants of all statuses, by reducing the high dropout rates, increasing the number of graduates who pursue a college degree, raising students' incomes and tax contributions, and using an array of other economic and social benefits. College graduate students who land well-paying jobs will raise their income and tax payments and can entice firms looking for educated workers to the state. Around 30,000 undocumented young adults between the age of 18 to 29 in Georgia will benefit from the institution plus the percentage. It could benefit the 30,000 students graduating from Georgia high schools every year. However, it is important to give all Georgia the opportunity for higher education. The fight for institution has been for many years, and it is important that we introduce legislation that respects the struggle of the students that gave courage to many of us to continue moving forward despite the obstacles at hand. We cannot limit the students who will benefit from this legislation by requiring continuous domicile since January the 1st, 2013. USCIS has stopped processing new applications since 2017. This excludes the 30,000 undocumented students graduating from Georgia high schools every year, or any other student who's not able to prove a continuous domicile in the state. I think that as somebody has discussed, Section 505 of the Legal Immigration Reform Act, IDEA of 1996 prohibits that any higher education benefit based on residence to undocumented immigrants unless they provide the same benefit to United States citizens in the same circumstances, regardless of the residence. The other states that have provided tuition have gone to the courts, and the courts have confirmed that the states that provide tuition to students who meet certain criteria regardless of their immigration status have fully complied with this provision. This law is very specific. It does not preclude states from providing tuition to undocumented student residents.
If I may, just in order for us to stay on time, you're providing some good information. If I could ask you to submit that to our office,
okay,
and just in keeping fair here, you're quite a bit over the 2 minutes. So good information. If you would, provide that to our office, we'll make sure we provide that to the members.
Okay, sounds good.
And thank you, sir. Thank you, Veronica Moldana.
That's okay.
Help
Veronica
me
Maldonado
out.
Torres. Good afternoon.
Thank you very much. I'm just a country boy from North Georgia.
That's all right.
So
I appreciate you
very
trying
much.
to say it. I
Yes,
appreciate
ma'am.
it.
Thank
Yes, sir.
you.
Good afternoon, Chairman Martin and distinguished members of the Georgia House Higher Education Committee. My name is Veronica Maldonado Torres, President and CEO of the Georgia Hispanic Chamber of Commerce, representing over 1,000 Hispanic businesses and many in our workforce. You know, the Georgia Hispanic community representing 1.1 million Latinos in the state of Georgia. I'm here today representing the Hispanic business and workforce voice in support of Georgia House Bill 131, the Workforce Development Act, on behalf of the Georgia Hispanic Chamber. As you know, the U.S. is facing a national labor shortage, and Georgia is not immune to the impact of the workforce issues. Georgia businesses are facing critical labor shortages in skilled industries like education, healthcare, and information technology. To help combat this, we must cultivate our future workforce to help stimulate the economy and meet the needs of businesses here in the state of Georgia. HB 131 can help us achieve this. This legislation will expand higher education opportunities for Georgia's more than 20,000 Deferred Action for Childhood Arrivals DACA program recipients, allowing them to build the skills and knowledge to help them better serve the Georgia job market and our businesses, all of our businesses. Already 20 other states have extended in-state tuition rates to include all students with established residency in Georgia is unfortunately falling behind on this one. We had the highest percent increase rate in job openings across the U.S., but we need the skilled workforce to fill this position, and the gap is leaving Georgia business community truly at a disadvantage compared to other states, and it's hurting our economy. Bridging the skill gap and creating a collective of professional leaders to fill the jobs in Georgia will ensure our economic growth and help us address our labor shortages. More education opportunities for Georgia students and workers are going to help strengthen our talent pipeline and provide us with the skills needed to fill these long vacant positions across the state. We heard from the Federal Reserve that the gaps between jobs and people continue to widen. This is an incredible opportunity at a time when businesses need a skilled workforce to ensure that these students have the access capable to achieve that. This bill is crucial to strengthening our economy and fulfilling this critical position gap across Georgia's major industries. And if we prioritize education and allow greater access to the labor force of the future, we can ensure sustained economic growth for the state and successfully address our workforce crisis. So we hope to support the passage of HB 131 to ensure Georgia has a skilled workforce to keep our economy strong and meet the needs of the future. Thank you very much. Veronica Maldonado-Torres with the Georgia Hispanic Chamber.
Thank you, Ms. Maldonado-Torres. See, I can be coached. Darlene Lynch. Ms. Lynch, we're going to have to get you to improve your penmanship as well. So,
Sorry about that.
Quite all right.
Thank you, Chairman, and thank you, Committee. My name is Darlene Lynch. I am the Chair of the Coalition of Refugee Service Agencies and the Chair of the Business and Immigration for Georgia Partnership, the BIG Partnership. CRSA is the oldest and largest coalition in this state, serving Georgia's refugee and immigrant communities with 25 organizations providing education, training, English learning, and job placement services to many thousands of foreign-born Georgians every year. The BIG Partnership, we created that in 2020 to partner with Georgia's business community to find ways to tap into the deep but really underutilized pool of talent that we have in our refugee and immigrant communities. And in 2021, we worked with the bipartisan House Global Talent Study Committee, and they provided a roadmap to maximizing this global talent that we have here in Georgia and meet the needs of today's workforce and the workforce of the future. Their number one recommendation was to remove unintended barriers to admission at Georgia public colleges. Today, BIG has more than 36 members and is rapidly growing. And you might say, why? Why are we growing so rapidly? What is bringing businesses to BIG? And that's the workforce. As we just heard, we have a workforce shortage that is hurting our business community. I just spoke with the top HR officer of a major car manufacturer here in Georgia who can't find good people to enter their technician training program. And he came to us because they want people who have a desire to learn, the drive to work, and the willingness to take risks. And they believe those are qualities of immigrants who come to Georgia in search of the American dream. And so I rise today to applaud your work in the off session to find answers to the workforce crisis and support your efforts to build a global talent pipeline by improving access to higher ed And we hope that HB 131 will successfully lead us down that path. I want to say couple of other things. Today we heard from some folks opposing this bill. Today, 1 in 10 Georgians is an immigrant. Georgia's different. Those numbers are going up every single year. We have more and more immigrant youth ready to enter our workforce than we have the day before yesterday. 85% of Georgia voters support immigration reform at the state level to meet our workforce needs. 85% of Georgia voters. We have had bipartisan support for our measures for years now, and that was including last week. We had more than 300 Georgians here,
please
and a
conclude.
bipartisan resolution signed by the Speaker of the House in support of refugees and immigrants in Georgia. This is a new Georgia, and one that we can help grow with a bill like HB 131. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Lynch. Carolina Ramos.
Good afternoon, Chairman Martin and members of the committee. My name is Carolina Ramos, and I'm the Director of Advocacy and Outreach at the Latin American Association, which is the largest and oldest Latino serving nonprofit here in Georgia. We just celebrated our 50th year anniversary. As the oldest and largest Latino serving nonprofit, we have served many DACA recipients throughout the years and have seen their contributions to our community around the state. They have come back and volunteered at our organization, have given talks to a lot of our youth, and are constantly encouraging our organization and assisting those across the state. They are a part of what not only makes this state great, but country great, and have accomplished what our organization stands for: to adapt, integrate, and thrive. Thousands of DACA recipients call Georgia home and have lived here the majority of their lives. They work, pay taxes, and contribute to the state. As we've heard before, they've contributed thousands, millions, billions of dollars to Georgia's economy, paying more than $77 million in state and local tax revenue. Our organization supports this legislation since it ensures DACA recipients can have access to higher education and further their contributions to this wonderful state. Failing to provide Georgia DACA recipients access to tuition equity has economic consequences for the entire state. Lastly, I wanted to thank Representative Carpenter for your leadership on this, and the LA supports this bill and the legislative process. Thank you.
Thank you. Jennifer Lee. If people are back in the corner, I need to give Crystal Munoz. You're next. I'll give you a heads up. Yes, ma'am.
All right. Good afternoon, Chairman Martin and members of the committee. My name is Jennifer Lee, and I am the Policy Director of Asian Americans Advancing Justice Atlanta. We are a nonprofit legal advocacy organization dedicated to protecting the civil rights of Asian Americans, Pacific Islander, and Arab, Middle Eastern, Muslim, and South Asian communities in Georgia. Along with our policy advocacy work, we have a legal services department where our attorneys assist individuals actually with their DACA applications and renewals, and also assist immigrants who are lucky to have pathways to citizenship to become U.S. citizens. We believe that all Georgia residents, including those with DACA and undocumented youth and young adults, are Georgians, and that they do deserve access to the same tuition rates. I would just ask that the committee expand their vision around this issue a little bit. Nearly half of states already provide access to in-state tuition rates to all residents, regardless of immigration status. This bill is limited to those with DACA, and it does potentially lower financial barriers, but not remove them. It includes longer residency requirements for those with DACA than for, and it theoretically puts them last in the admissions line. So in short, the bill does not treat all Georgia residents equally. I would like to underscore a couple concerns that have come up. I still have a concern with the new language in the bill with the opportunity tuition rate specified at a minimum of 110%, but no maximum listed. And so without the maximum, I just worry that the bill loses its structure and its impact, and ask that that be clarified if possible, so that the intent of the bill is clear. And then I also really appreciate the chairman's intention of moving this bill forward. But I do still have some concerns about the newly inserted language about college admissions practices. I think that's potentially a little problematic or confusing. And just as background, a couple years ago, there was a bill on the Senate side that mandated certain in-state, out-of-state tuition, in-state and out-of-state percentages for newly admitted classes. And the presidents of, the University of Georgia and Georgia Tech came out and were very concerned about sort of the state being inserted into admissions decisions. And so I just want to flag that as well. And I just question that with the current and future enrollment declines, whether that language is really needed. I understand the belt and suspenders approach, but whether or not the language is really needed and just potentially could cause some confusion and problems. Last, I'd just very briefly like to share the story of a Korean American woman I spoke to recently. She moved to Duluth when she was 6 years old and lived there for.
Can I ask you? I mean, you're
I'm sorry.
Almost double over.
Okay.
Could you?
Oh, time goes fast when you're up here.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
If you wouldn't mind, and we'd.
I'll just wrap up.
Yeah, and we'd love. Yeah, you can submit that for the record. We'd be glad to include it.
All right. I just want to say that treating Georgia residents equally doesn't harm anyone, and providing access to in-state tuition would provide an opportunity. So we thank you for your consideration. Just hope this is the start of a larger conversation.
Thank you. Ms. Munoz. Munoz?
Yeah.
Right? Did I get close?
Somewhat. It's okay.
Okay. We'll sound it on the record so that I can improve.
Yeah. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Crystal Munoz. I'm the immigration analyst at GBPI, Georgia Budget and Policy Institute. First, I'd like to thank the chairman and the committee for holding this hearing, for allowing me to share these thoughts, and for working on this critical issue. At GBPI, we have and always will advocate for a quality education and access to education for every Georgian. That's why I'm here in support of DACA students to have an opportunity to continue their education, which is a right they deserve. Even though these students consider Georgia their home, for 10 plus years the state has pushed them away. Georgia is one of only 3 states, with South Carolina and Alabama being the others, that still practices some of the most restrictive policies for education access for DACA recipients and undocumented youth. Georgia is also one of 7 states that does not have access to in-state tuition for these students. You've heard that DACA recipients contribute millions of dollars annually in state and local taxes, which are not only used to help Georgians afford in-state tuition, but they also help those who take advantage of the out-of-state tuition waivers for border residents for people who have never lived in Georgia. Georgia invests almost $11,200 in these DACA students, and $5,800 of those dollars come from state dollars investing in their K through 12 education. But once they finish high school, they're forced to either just stop their educational careers, or they're forced to leave somewhere else. So the investment that Georgia makes in these students is effectively just lost. And finally, I think we can all agree that a post-secondary education can change the trajectory of a person's life. It can lift people out of poverty and open up the world of immense opportunity. And I ask the members of this committee to take into consideration the concerns that we have for this bill, and continue to work on it to make it better and help all Georgians. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Luis Zaldivar.
Got it. In the first try.
Coachable. Yes, sir.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Chairman, representatives. My name is Luis Zaldivar. I am the State Director with CASA. We are a national organizing hub. We've been landed here in Georgia a year ago because they hired me. In the past year, we have recruited close to 700 members. We hope to make it to 1,000 members in a couple months. We focus mostly on the South Metro area. I was really excited to hear about this bill. Thank you to everybody who has worked on this. Have a lot of members who are DACA recipients. I have a lot more members who are just undocumented, but they know somebody who is a DACA recipient. I was ready to bring them here. You will have had a longer testimony if it wasn't because of the sub that happened yesterday. After the sub, it has become clear that if this bill passes as it is, we cannot tell our DACA recipient members that they can go to Georgia Tech or they can go to a good university. They will be stuck going to a lower level college. If this bill passes as it is, we cannot, we're going to have the problem of having the institutions having a second tier of processing just for DACA recipients, which is going to make everything more complicated. I really hope that after this conversation that we're having today, we realize what we're doing, because we may be creating a bigger problem just by passing this bill and just to say that you did something for the immigrants. I lastly want to say that the other reason why I cannot support this bill as it is because those DACA recipients also have parents who cannot even drive to work without being scared. And it will be hurting for me to tell them that their parents are not as good as them. So thank you all so much for your time. But just to relate to the folks who testified against this, no human is illegal. And Georgia is being built as we speak by undocumented hands. Let's think about them. Thank you.
Thank you. Katie Stamper.
Hello,
Hi.
I'm a lawyer. I'm in Woodstock. I'm an American citizen, veteran, all that jazz. I went to Emory undergrad. I paid my tuition. I worked full time to pay Emory tuition, full time, every dollar. And then I paid taxes on the income I earned to pay tuition. Now, I want to talk to you about the bill. If you'll please look at lines 91 and 92, it says that nothing in this code section shall be construed to require in-state tuition classification for individuals not lawfully present in Georgia. I am a lawyer. I used to do a lot of appellate work. I recently represented a client suing the Immigration Enforcement and Review Board. That was a fascinating experience. I want to point out to you that we have an 11th Circuit Court of Appeals decision from 2017, Estrada versus Becker, where the court specifically says, as DACA recipients, they simply were given a reprieve from potential removal. That does not mean they are any way, quote, lawfully present, unquote, under the act. So these folks all talking about, oh, they're lawful, they can get a driver's license. They're not lawful. The next thing I want to talk to you about is lines 102 through 107. Now, I know a lot of people in the legislature are not lawyers. I understand that. But when I walk into a courtroom, I have to use the rules of statutory construction, okay? So when I read this language, it says, okay, an eligible unit, blah, 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 shall give priority consideration. I don't see priority consideration defined anywhere in the bill, and therefore that is extremely flexible language. Then it says, to enrollment applications by qualified students, blah, 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 who are classified for in-state or out-of-state tuition over applications by qualified opportunity students. And here's the part that really kills me. And may defer enrollment of qualified opportunity students until all timely applications by qualified students in or out are accepted, deferred, or rejected. In the law, may means may. You might do it. You might not do it. There's no mandate to do it. So this law basically says our heart is in the right place, but we don't really mean it. So this law is basically saying that all of those out-of-staters that should get consideration first don't have to get consideration first. It's got nice window dressing, but I can walk into court and I can challenge it. The other thing is, I would be tempted to challenge it anyway, just because you have your lines 91, 92 that says it's only for people in Georgia unlawfully, but then you go and give it to DACA people who are we're in the 11th Circuit. Their decisions control, and they've said they're not here legally. So, you know, you guys are really kind of putting yourselves in a box. I also want to say I'm very happy that people...
We're at 3 minutes. If you could wind up.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No, that's quite all right. I'm going to give you the opportunity to complete.
Yeah, I think that's good enough. They made a lot of other comments that I don't like, but the statutory construction on it, man, if I had the energy, I would file a lawsuit against it as soon as it passed. Thanks.
Yes, ma'am. Allow me to say this because I'm not a lawyer, but it specifically says that nothing in this code section shall be construed to give in-state tuition, and that's what the words on paper say, and that's what it does. This bill doesn't get, I mean, you don't have to, I'll engage you at another time. Well, I mean, what I'm reading, nothing in this code section, the language you brought up, nothing in this code section shall be construed to require in-state tuition classification for individuals not lawfully present in Georgia. So that makes it clear black letter law that this bill does not give the individuals alluded to in this bill in-state tuition. Wouldn't you agree with that?
Well, I read the previous bill.
No, I mean, this language hasn't changed from the previous bill. I mean, that's black letter law that says you cannot have, nothing in this code section gives in-state tuition to people in the country unlawful. Okay, so this does exactly what we said. We're not, the reason I draw that point is there are different in-state tuition classification, there are different rights inured to that are not before this body today. So purposefully, we created a different tuition category so you're giving no more, no less than you see in these 6 pages to these individuals. I just think it's very important to do that. And as far as the line up for may defer, because that's a belt and suspenders issue. Again, if the university has turned away people or is in the process of turning away people, they would not be an eligible unit, so you would never get to this point in the law. And the reason it says may instead of shall is if you have many open spaces, and if you had 1,000 open spaces and you had 100 people in state and 100 people out of state and 100 people that are opportunity tuition, it would be ridiculous to say you shall defer them if you knew you were still going to have 700 empty spaces. So that's the reason the may is in there. Again, I would agree with you that section may not even be necessary because if you're full, you're not an eligible institution. So I'd be happy to talk. I'm not a lawyer, but I'd be happy to talk to those specific situations. That concludes our testimony as far as this. I'm going to go back. We do have a couple of other bills we have to get to. We're at 13 minutes. We're obviously, as I said earlier, we're not taking action. As Chairman Carpenter, I'm going to go to you. I'm going to mention one other thing that earlier in the testimony I think you wanted to get back to. It was alluded to that people from Tennessee can't even get the same deal. Just to point out, and I don't know that we have anybody in the university system here to speak to this, but we have border waivers that are in place. I think there's a number of people from the state of Tennessee that get in-state tuition through border waivers at many of our colleges in northwest Georgia. I know at other colleges in South Georgia that's available. So we can make that more available to the committee if they like. With that, Chairman Carpenter, I'm going to let you wind up, and we're going to move on to the next
Thank you,
item.
Chairman. Thank you, committee. Sorry I had to bounce out. I'm presenting another bill downstairs in a different category. But I would just follow you up by listening to all that we've heard today. There is not a single U.S. citizen that is planning to go to college that can't move to Georgia and in 12 months pay in-state tuition. If they establish residency in the state of Georgia for 12 months, they can pay in-state tuition. In-state tuition. What this bill says is that if you've been in the state of Georgia since 2013, you can pay an opportunity rate for these certain individuals. So we are not giving something that any U.S. citizen couldn't come to Georgia and in 12 months get, even a better rate. So the straw argument that has been on display here today is completely untrue. You read it in the paper, you get an email. I bet you got 6 emails in your account right now that says, I can't believe you're doing it. And I'm telling you, that's not what this bill does. That argument does not hold water. This simply says if you've been a DACA recipient since 2013, not that you've moved to Georgia, that you literally have been here since you've got your DACA, which happened in 2012, 2013. If you've been here the whole time, if we've educated you, if Georgia's all you know, then you get a chance to pay an opportunity rate in the state of Georgia. That's all I got.
Thank you, Chairman Carpenter. We got one question. I'll allow that, and then I'm going to ask us if we can move forward. Representative Jackson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I've sat here all afternoon and listened very attentively to what has been said, and I reflect back. This is a great bill for human beings. And I was sitting up here and I pulled a poem, and I'm not going to read it all, it's not long, but the title of it is I Too, and it's by Langston Hughes.
Would the lady would suspend and allow me to inquire? We will give you an opportunity to do that at a later date if the lady would yield back. I'm told we have a hard stop at 3 o'clock.
Okay.
I have a gentleman that's been waiting for patiently for 2 hours, and I don't want to look at him in a minute and tell him we have to leave. But one of your caucus members on the Democratic side. So I if you would, I'm sure the lady would. But if you would mind sounding that,
I yield,
thank you.
but I would like to come back.
Yes, ma'am. I promise you we will do that. So what I'm going to do at this point is we're going to complete testimony here. I want to say there should have been a notice that gone out. We will meet again tomorrow, ladies and gentlemen, at 2 to 4. The meeting notice got out. I want to be clear because there's piqued interest in this. We will not have House Bill 131. On the agenda tomorrow. That will not be put on the agenda tomorrow. We have those items we had talked about earlier today, 185 and 130, that we'll try to work on tomorrow. We may take a look again at 163 and our opportunity tuition 249. But to be clear to those that have an interest in this, that 131 will not be on our agenda tomorrow at this point. So with that, we're going to move on and go to the representative and let him present to us House Bill 427. And thank you, Representative Kennard, right? I've messed up names all day. I've wanted for a number of years down here.
You've given me a hearing. You can call me what you want.
Yes, sir.
Sorry I missed your first call. I was very hydrated. Thank you, Mr. Chair and committee, for this hearing on HB 427. Criminal records in Georgia are a persistent and stubborn barrier to upward mobility in our state, and in my opinion, they are largely unjust, with consequences that affect the individual, their family, and negatively impact our economy. Criminal records are blocking our constituents out of good-paying jobs, housing, and out of our colleges and universities. The current college application process requires a potential student to disclose if they have a record, and what needs to be understood is that all GCIC records, that's Georgia Criminal Information Center records, are not created equal, far from it. Georgia has 10.7 million people, and the GCIC system currently houses a record for a whopping 4.5 million individuals, almost half our population. Now, of the 4.5 million record holders, only 55,000 of them are conviction records for violent or serious sexual crimes. That is a little over 1% of the record volume. 99% of all of our records are for nonviolent, non-sexual offenses, and for arrest only, no indictment and or no conviction. This last category is particularly troublesome because if you are merely arrested for anything in Georgia, immediately a GCIC record is generated and will pop up on a job, housing, or college application. Keep in mind that you have not been formally charged, but you are already punished with a record. And the record itself is an implicit presumption of guilt because the person or agency running the record does not discriminate between arrest only, formally charged, nor conviction. A record is a record is a record. So much for innocent till proven guilty. Furthermore, if you are formally charged, go through due process, and the case results in a non-conviction, it was thrown out, it was dismissed, you were found not guilty, the arrest record continues to linger, further punishing the individual for a crime for which they were acquitted. What is shocking is there are 1.82 million individuals with an arrest-only, no charge, no conviction record. It is a problem. It's keeping our constituents out of Georgia colleges and universities, and it's debilitating on many fronts. First of all, to the individual. Everyone here recognizes that education can serve as a powerful equalizer, that the more you learn, the more you earn. In my opinion, Raising minimum wage is not nearly as effective as a person raising their value and the marketplace rewarding them with higher compensation. Personal value is raised through education, degrees, certifications. Another consequence is workforce shortage, which we have now, and a crisis is looming as thousands of new jobs are coming over the next few years, and we don't have an educated workforce to fill them. Thousands of Georgians are boxed out of higher education because of this policy and therefore boxed out of current and future good-paying jobs. It's my understanding that this committee is concerned with dwindling enrollment among our institutions. So this is the problem. HB 427 is a solution. 427 gets potential students beyond the box of our college applications. Disclosure of a record would not be required with the exception of sexual offenses. There is also an additional caveat. If there is a particular degreed profession where a criminal record would be prohibitive, that conversation would happen on the front end by the institution to the student before an investment of time and money is made. For instance, certain felony charges around fraud, financial crimes would prohibit someone from being a certified public accountant. So there would be an honest conversation about that specific path. It is also important to note that 427 addresses the college application only. To live on campus in student housing is a separate application process and would remain subject to the criminal record inquiry. We are only addressing the ability for someone to attend classes and pursue their education. Also, this bill does not affect private colleges. We're only talking about our public schools. The bill is bipartisan. 3 Democrats and 3 Republicans are sponsors. That is the intent of the bill. I do have some young folks here to provide personal testimony on the issue.
Thank you, Representative Kennard. We have how many? We have 4 speakers. Patricia Rodriguez, is that correct? Is that Patricia? Patrick.
It's
I'm
Patrick,
sorry.
but it's okay.
I don't have my glasses on today. It's Patrick.
Yeah, no, thank you so
Thank
much. So first off, thank you, Representative Kennard, for championing this effort, and to the committee for being here today. And also want to give a special thank you to Chairman Martin for putting this bill on the agenda. I had something prepared, but I think I'm going to take just a moment to speak from my heart, which I think is where I really need to come from today. I've done 5 years here in the Georgia Department of Corrections. I was released from prison in December of 2019. It's been about 37 months and 2021-22 in 3 days exactly, because it's 2/22/23, and I'm just like a numbers guy. And when I went to school at Kennesaw State University in 2008 as a person with no criminal record. I got in, everything was fine. Went to prison. Once I got out, I wanted to go back because I understand the value of education, and then I had to answer that question. I wrote a 14-page essay explaining and detailing every single crime that I went through and how my life changed the trajectory. That 14-page essay is longer than most bills that get presented here in the Georgia State Capitol, and it was to simply stand for and justify my character so the institution would have a belief point that I could be a student here. I had to get my GCIC, my arrest records, and all of my final dispositions in order to present a packet to say, hey, I'm worthy to be a student. For me, I represent not just myself, but also a lot of other formerly incarcerated people. Professionally, I'm the co-executive director of the Georgia Coalition for Higher Education in Prison, and I also direct Georgia State University's Prison Education Project. So I myself am responsible for overseeing 3 associate's degrees being implemented at 3 state prisons here in the state of Georgia. I work closely with the Department of Corrections, the Department of Community Supervision, and also the Bureau of Prisons. And I work closely with them in terms of thinking about education as being that next step for people who want to just come home and live a normal life. People who have criminal records are our neighbors. They go to our churches. They're at Publix. And this bill here allows the opportunity for people to apply as normal students and not have to go through an excess barrier, which is stopping from a lot of people from going. And to name just one kind of stat and statistic, we do rank #1 in probation and parole here in the state of Georgia in the entire world when we compare ourselves to every other developed country. And last year, we found out that we were ranked last in mental health, 50th in the nation, and we have a long way to go. So I'm saying here today that we might rank first in probation and parole, but I believe in Georgia, and we are going to bring that number down, and this is the first step for that. Thank you.
Yes, sir, and thank you for limiting your comments. We're just at a hard stop. The next chairman was looking at us from off camera there, so we do need to move, and we'll have you back.
All right,
Thank you very much. Ms. Cook, Abby Cook, I'm going to ask you to, if you could Come on up and just briefly, if you can, and Jeff Breedlove, and then we're going to have to bring this to a conclusion, and we'll have you back.
All right, no
Yes,
worries.
ma'am.
This is okay. So yeah, my name is Abby. I want to thank you all for your time today. I'm a senior at Georgia State University, currently getting 2 degrees and graduating in May. As a 17-year-old, I made the incredibly poor choice to drive a car after consuming an alcoholic beverage earlier that night. While I was driving, my friend exited the car when we were moving 45 miles an hour. After a few weeks of being in the hospital, she passed away. And there's just no worse punishment than begging someone to wake up who's not going to wake up. So I attended Kennesaw State University as a dual enrollment student a few months after the accident. I was going to reapply as an incoming freshman and was denied and told if I attempted to appeal the decision, all of my credits that I'd earned there would be stripped off of my record, which means I wouldn't have been able to graduate high school or achieve any of my credits as a freshman. I applied to Georgia State University in December 2019. Through the process, I had to write a personal statement explaining what I just shared to the administrators at the university. The process took 3 months, and I was accepted on a probationary period, meaning I had to reapply each semester despite achieving a 4.0 my first 2 semesters at State. Through all of this, I wasn't sure I was someone who was welcomed at university. Despite all of the benefits of higher education, I thought this was something that would not be possible for me, and I almost gave up until I was accepted at GSU. In my 3 years at Georgia State, I have completed 5 fellowships, 3 internships. I've been published 6 times with 5 exhibitions across the state of Georgia. I'm an art major. And I have been connected to resources that have allowed me to be a contributing member of society and a leader in my community. Without higher education, I don't know where I'd be. It almost wasn't possible for me, and we now know that there are millions of Georgians, just like me, wanting to better themselves, but facing a barrier to do so. And I'm going to yield my time. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Ms. Cook. I appreciate it. Can you give us thank you, sir, Mr. Breedlove.
I'm Jeff Breedlove. I'm with the Georgia Council for Recovery. I'm a person in long-term recovery. I must say, I was glad to be included in the young people. That was pretty good. Made me feel good.
Yes, sir.
Look, in the interest of time and in all seriousness.
That's all guys have to stick together.
That's right,
Breedlove.
exactly.
Yes, sir.
Listen, this is a very serious issue to thousands of Georgians in recovery from mental health and substance use addiction. And the reason why is, it's one thing to hold us accountable for actions that, and I've been to jail, not to prison, but I've been to jail, and I've been on probation, and I've stood before a judge, and I will assure you I paid a very large fine and did many hundreds of hours of community service. And for brothers and sisters of mine across the state, I think we would agree, we'll do our time and we'll pay our fines and we'll do what the judge tells us to do. But when we've done what the judge has told us to do, we need to be able to access higher education. Because what do you want from us? Do you not want people to become better taxpayers, to provide for themselves and their families? So no bill is perfect, but this bill is necessary and essential because every time we deny a Georgian because of a mistake they've made, but who has answered to the judge and answered to the community, there should never be a barrier, and I'll end on this note. I'm not good at numbers, but I know we spend well over 50% of our state budget on education, so we must think that's important. If we're pro-life and if we're pro-family, we must have policies congruent with that to make sure there's no barrier to a Georgian getting the education they need and deserve to be a better community member. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. We have, this is our last speaker, so.
Thank you so much.
Yes.
My name is Paige Dukes. I'm a communications associate at the Southern Center for Human Rights here in Atlanta, and I'm also on the board with the Coalition for Higher Education in Prison. I am here as a directly impacted person myself as well. I'm actually specifically impacted by the code section that's cited in lines 23 through 25, which is Georgia's version of the 94 crime bill that designated the 7 deadly sins. When I was 20 years old, I was in college at a Georgia State school, Georgia State actually, when I dropped out of college and resorted to crime to support my addiction, and unfortunately ended up going to prison for all of my 20s because of the mandatory minimum bills. So I am labeled with one of those serious violent offenses. And when I came home, I applied to the University of Georgia and was denied for this and all future terms. So I was not encouraged to apply next semester, but was excluded from the admissions process. Even though I had a very competitive GPA by that point, I had started going to college while I was incarcerated. I didn't take no for an answer. I went back to the school where I had been accepted at a small private school and offered a scholarship and graduated with a higher than a 4.0 GPA. I do wish that we had had time to hear the poem about human beings, because I do think that that also applies to this bill. Because
And we will.
Okay,
We'll,
good.
I promise you.
I'd want to speak specifically to the code section because I think that the discriminations are a mistake, and I think that we should make it all inclusive, because people coming home after serving long sentences, facing harsh and often untenable conditions of probation, which often dictate whether they can even step foot on a college campus. These are the same folks who have the lowest recidivism rates. According to the Bureau of Justice statistics, people who are convicted of rape and sexual assault have the lowest recidivism rates of all offense categories. And according to DOJ data, people who served time for sex offenses had a 7.7% chance of being convicted for any subsequent sex offense. For violent sexual offenses, that rate almost disappears. Compare that to folks convicted to Georgia's general recidivism rate for people who've served time in prison, which is 60%. People convicted of homicide have the lowest recidivism rate, less than 5% across the board. And this is very important. For people who have any college education at all, these rates of reconviction all but disappear. That's because we know that college is good for all human beings. It exposes us to different ideas, life experiences, cultures, opportunities, etc., not to mention the job opportunities and the opportunity for a better socioeconomic status. The people that are most discriminated against in college applications by far have the lowest recidivism rates. And I want to bring up campus safety because one of the things that was cited in my denial from UGA was campus safety. And UGA has the highest rate of campus rape in the state. So I, as a person going onto that college campus, was more at risk than I was posing any risk to any person on the college campus. So I do want to bring up some statistics about Title IX as well.
I'm going to have.
I'm almost done.
We're at a hard stop. I mean,
90% of campus sexual assaults are committed by people the survivor knows. The vast majority of college rape is done by quote unquote people labeled serial perpetrators, committing an average of 6 rapes per year, classified under Title IX as undetected, meaning they have no criminal record. Like me, they didn't have a criminal record when they committed a serious violent offense. So I will say this to say that codifying discriminations into law will signal to state universities and technical colleges it is acceptable to further discriminate against people who are already largely being kept out, whose applications like mine might be just thrown in the trash. So thank you so much for talking about this issue and for advocating for equal access to education for all in Georgia.
thank you. And thank you, everyone. And I'm sorry we had to rush through that. We'll have you back. I would normally come back to you, but if you don't mind, I am going to move us on and clear the room out. You'll have a notice, in your mailbox if you didn't already see it. We'll be together again tomorrow at 2. Without objection, we'll stand adjourned. I see no objection. We are adjourned.